What if the sense of being you is just infinite awareness playing hide and seek with itself? While Rupert Spira's reflections on localization gesture toward this radical insight, they're part of a broader conversation, one that stretches from Advaita Vedanta's Atman-Brahman unity to quantum physics observer effect. Today we explore how pure knowing becomes seemingly fragmented, how the infinite dons the mask of the finite, not to lose itself but to taste its own mystery. This is an Adyashanti style, awakening with a twist. The dreamer is dreaming itself as the dream.
In a limited form. Just as light, when it passes through a prism, is refracted into numerous colors, so the one mind, pure knowing or pure consciousness, when it localizes itself in the form of each of our minds, refracts itself into numerous different experiences. Just as the light contains all of the colors unmanifest within itself and only manifests as different colors when it is refracted through a prism. So the one mind, pure knowing, pure consciousness, contains within itself all possible experiences in potential. But these experiences are only actualized or realized when the one mind localizes itself or contracts itself into each of our finite minds. It is through the agency of each of our minds that the one mind appears as a multiplicity and diversity of experience. It is for this reason that although experience always seems to comprise a multiplicity and diversity of objects and people, we always feel that we are only having one experience at a time. The one experience that we are having all the time is the experience of pure knowing. I should say. The one experience we are having all the time is knowing. I reserve the term pure knowing for knowing in its unmanifest state or condition. Just as light is refracted by a prism into different colors, so pure knowing is refracted through each of our minds as different types of experience in human beings. Thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. By thoughts, I include all thoughts, images, memories. By feelings, I include all emotions and sensations. And by perceptions, I mean sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells. These are the three categories of experience that the one mind, pure knowing, is refracted into in a human mind. Take your thoughts, for instance. The current thought. Doesn't matter what you are thinking about. You can think about anything you like. All there is to that thought is the experience of thinking. And the only substance present in thinking is knowing. So there is no such thing in our experience as a thought, an object with its own separate and independent existence. There is just the experience of thinking. And thinking is a coloring of pure knowing, a limitation of pure knowing. The experience of thinking just gives pure knowing a temporary name and form. But the only substance present in the thought or the experience of thinking is knowing. That's what William Blake meant when he said, "All things possible to be believed are an image of truth." in reference to the experience of thinking, truth is the name we give to pure knowing or pure consciousness. Every thought we have, irrespective of its content, is a modulation of truth. Although the thought itself may be untrue, it is still made of truth. It's what Picasso meant when he said, all art tells a lie, but it speaks the truth. However true or untrue our thoughts may be, at the level of thought, they are all equally made out of truth, pure knowing. And because all thoughts are a limitation of truth or pure knowing, no thought can be absolutely true because it is a fragment of the truth. That is why nothing can be said about reality that is absolutely true. If we want to speak the absolute truth, we should remain silent. Being a limitation or a fragment of reality or truth, the process of thinking is always tending to return to its source or its origin. And it is because of this that the disciplines of philosophy and science exist in our culture. Every thought process or line of reasoning that a philosopher or a scientist embarks on is a process whereby the finite mind is tending to return to its source. That is why all philosophers and scientists desire one thing alone, which is understanding. All their thoughts tend towards understanding. And the experience of understanding is the dissolution of the process of thinking in its source, pure consciousness. It is for this reason, contrary to popular belief, that for some people thinking is a spiritual path. It is as legitimate a spiritual path as any other path. Every thought that anyone ever has ultimately seeks to merge in the truth from which it emanated. Being a fragment or a limitation of that absolute truth, every thought is unstable. Every thought is therefore dynamic, always tending towards its source, understanding or truth. Every thought that issues from a poet's mind is like a lover seeking its beloved. If our thoughts tend towards objects and people, then those objects and people are just temporary names and forms of the beloved. Representations of the beloved in the form of the finite mind. All our memories are images of the eternal present, clothed in the language of the mind. What we are really remembering with every memory is our eternity, our essence, pure knowing. All nostalgia for the past is really nostalgia for ourself. But as human beings, we don't just think and imagine and remember. We feel and sense. And just as all thoughts, images and memories are refractions, modulations of the light of pure knowing, so all our emotions and sensations are likewise fragments or apparent limitations of the same light of pure knowing. colorings of consciousness. All there is to an emotion is feeling, and the only substance present in feeling is knowing. All there is to a sensation is sensing, and the only substance present in sensing is knowing. In some of our feelings, this pure knowing shines unobstructed. And we call these feelings happiness or love or joy. And in other feelings, this same light of pure knowing shines but dimmed or obstructed, concealed. In which case, the same light of pure knowing is experienced as sorrow, lack, shame, etc. But whenever we experience such a feeling as sorrow, lack, or shame, all these feelings are dynamic. They all long for resolution. This longing for resolution is the longing to be returned to the source from which they emanate. The resolution of all such feelings is what we call happiness. Or love. So just as truth or understanding is the name we give to pure knowing or consciousness in relation to our thoughts, so happiness or love is the name we give to pure knowing or consciousness in relation to our feelings. All our feelings either shine with happiness or tend towards happiness. Happiness revealed or happiness concealed, but always the same happiness. The stuff out of which all feelings are made, irrespective of their content. When the one mind, pure knowing or pure happiness, limits itself or localizes itself in the form of each of our minds, its innate nature of happiness is compromised or veiled, fragmented. And all our afflictive feelings are fragments, partial veilings of pure happiness. All our suffering is simply a veiling or obscuring of happiness, a fragmentation of happiness. And that is why all such feelings tend always and only towards resolution, that is, towards happiness. All such feelings are simply limitations of the supreme happiness. And all feelings longed to be returned or to be unveiled and revealed as such. In other words, when pure knowing localizes or limits itself in the form of each of our minds, its innate nature of happiness is concealed or fragmented, and this concealing of happiness is felt by a human as desire. It is for this reason that all desires tend only toward happiness. The only desire there is the desire for happiness. And it is not a person or a self who desires happiness. There is no such entity as a person or a self or a finite mind. The person, the self, or the finite mind is just a temporary localization or limitation of the one mind. It is never a person who desires happiness. It is happiness itself that fragments itself or conceals itself in each of our minds And it is happiness itself that pulls itself or draws itself back to itself. This pull from happiness is what is known as grace. It is the pull from the whole, that it is the pull, the gravitational pull that the whole exerts on each of its parts. This gravitational pull of grace is experienced from the perspective of the person or the finite mind as desire. Therefore, all desires, irrespective of their content, are sacred. All desires come from the divine and are only for the divine. The object or the person that we desire is simply a placeholder, a temporary name and form, a veiling of the true object of our desire, which is the divine, the beloved, happiness itself. This is why William Blake said, "He who restrains desire does so because his desire is weak enough to be restrained." Don't restrain your desires in whatever direction they take you. Widen and deepen your desires until they can only be fulfilled by happiness itself. But as human beings, we don't just think, imagine and remember. We don't just feel and sense, we also perceive. We see, hear, taste, touch and smell. Each of these activities of our own minds are modulations or fragments, limitations, colorings of the one mind. Activities of pure knowing. Activities through which, or as which, pure knowing limits itself and appears in form. It is in this sense that it is said in the tantric traditions that perception is creation. It does not mean that reality is created by the fact of perception. It means that formless reality, uncreated and formless reality, appears as created things, as form, through the agency or activity of perception. It is the fact of perceiving that makes formless reality appear in form. Or we could say it is the act of perception that gives formless reality a temporary name and form. Is, as Shakespeare says, the act of perception that gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. This is not some highfalutin idea, it is simply in line with our experience. All there is to sights, sounds, tastes, textures and smells is seeing, hearing, tasting, touching and smelling. And the only substance present in seeing, hearing, tasting, touching and smelling is knowing. That is why, however diverse the objects that we seem to see, hear, taste, touch and smell may seem to be, we always feel we are only having one experience. We are always only having one experience. And the stuff that experience is made of is knowing, which is always one. It is perception, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting and smelling, that refracts the light of pure knowing, or the unity of being, into an apparent multiplicity and diversity of objects and selves. And just as all thoughts ultimately tend towards understanding or truth, just as all feelings tend towards happiness or love, so all perceptions tend towards beauty. It is why we love to walk in nature, to listen to music, to watch movies, to eat delicious meals. It is because every perception we have is longing to be divested of its temporary name and form, its limitation, and to be revealed as pure beauty, pure knowing. That is why we have art in our culture. Under the prevailing materialist paradigm, art should really not exist. It is a surplus, unnecessary. But this is not consistent with our experience. If this were true, art would be the first thing to go in civilization. It's not. It's the last thing to go. When Messiaen wrote the quartet for the end of time in a concentration camp, he said, although this music was written in the midst of appalling suffering, it came from the deepest joy in myself. In relation to our perceptions, the one mind or pure knowing is referred to as beauty. As such, beauty is the substance or the reality of every perception we have. irrespective of its content, irrespective of how pleasant or unpleasant it may be. Some objects shine with their reality, other objects conceal their reality. But in both cases, their reality is the same. And some objects have the power to take the viewer to its reality, or to reality itself. These are the true works of art. The objects, the paintings, the pieces of music, the dances, the poems, whose purpose is to unveil reality, divest our sense perceptions of their limitations and reveal the joy, the beauty that is their essence. Remember, William Blake, every word, every bird that cuts the airy way is an immense world of delight, enclosed by the five senses. Our sense perceptions clothe reality in name and form. As you can tell by this contemplation, I consider William Blake one of the great tantric masters of the Western tradition. When we hear a beautiful piece of music or taste a delicious meal, it is not the music that is beautiful. It is not the food that is delicious. What we are really tasting or knowing in these experiences is the taste of our true nature. It is our true nature that is beautiful, or that is beauty itself. It is our true nature that is delicious. All a good cook wants to do is to give us the taste of our true nature. That is what distinguishes a cook from an artist. Whenever we walk in nature and feel its beauty, we are simply tasting the nature of the one mind, tasting its nature of beauty. Beauty never belongs to the object or the person. It is always a taste of ourself. It is for this reason that just as all scientists and philosophers and poets tend towards truth, it is for the same reason that all artists tend only towards beauty. Two different pathways to the same reality. And for the same reason that the activities of all people tend towards happiness or love. These are the three pathways that are provided for us. The path of truth, the path of love or happiness, and the path of beauty. The path of knowledge, the path of devotion, and the path of beauty. The way of the philosopher, the way of the lover, the way of the artist. All the thoughts, images, memories, feelings, sensations or perceptions that we have are limited or relative. That is, relative to the finite mind through which they are known. But the truth, the love, and the beauty from which all of these emanate is not itself subject to their limitations or their relative qualities. Thus truth, love or happiness and beauty are absolute. They are not relative to or limited by the finite mind. They are absolute qualities, if we can call them qualities. They are the nature of reality. Or in religious language, the qualities of God. It is for this reason that in this approach there is no restriction on our activities. For instance, our retreats are not held in silence. This is not a path of discipline or renunciation. It is a path of enjoyment. All that is necessary is to be sure that experience no longer conceals its reality, but rather shines with it. Having said that, let's remain silent until we're outside this room. Thank you.